Welcome back to Go-Tanium Tech Talks. I'm your host, Ashley McGlone, and here we are today showing you the greatest and latest that Tanium has to offer. How many containers do we have? I don't know. Does your shop run containers? Do you find it difficult to try to keep up with all of them? Or maybe you suspect other folks in the environment are running containers you don't know about? That's a visibility problem that Tanium was designed to solve. So today I have one of our experts in-house, Adam. Adam's going to show us today the new Tanium client container content. Adam, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Thanks, Ashley. My name's Adam McKee, and I've been with Tanium just shy of 5 years. Interesting fact is I just recently switched over to the SME organization as the lead SME for containers, having spent the last year and a half in our Tanium as a service organization, helping build and deploy hundreds and thousands of containers for our customers that we actually service within TAS. It gives me an interesting perspective from a standpoint of being a customer of Tanium and looking to use Tanium to get more visibility into containers.
So Adam, Tanium is known for its visibility and control. And what I understand, this is a visibility play at first, kind of a minimal viable product MVP kind of thing, 1.0 release. And that's fantastic because from what I understand, customers have really been asking for this. So what drove this development? Obviously, people were asking for it. What were they looking for?
Yeah, so customers are looking and asking us specifically, like, what containers are running in my environment? How long have they been around? Are they breaching any paving policy? Do I have containers that I don't know about in my environment? Are people running containers on their desktops? We can see those, but we can also see, your orchestrated containers. And do you have any containers that are not orchestrated in your environment that you would expect to be orchestrated? So we're able to see all of those things and many more different parts that I can go through in part of our demo here in a bit.
So for those who aren't really container aware, what's the difference between unorchestrated and orchestrated containers?
Sure. So most of our customers actually use some kind of orchestration. And all that simply means is some automated way for managing and deploying containers, making sure that they're updated and that you're running them in a redundant manner as required based on your business. An unorchestrated container is something that could be slipped in somewhere. Somebody could be running it on their machine. Somebody could have just initiated a container launching on a server or on a worker node within Kubernetes. And we're able to get visibility into those and see, where are they running and let you see if you should be running those.
So last week, I actually went through our internal training on this, and it was quite thorough. And Adam brought some slides today, and I asked him to show you some slides because there are some key things here that just need to be visualized. So Adam, why don't you walk us through the slides you brought today?
All right. So like I said, the initial initial release of Tanium containers allows us to get visibility into the containers that are running into your environment. Of course, we have a host hygiene play that we've already done pretty successful with, and being able to see where your container hosts are. Tanium client is installed on your container host typically already. You can use all of your existing use cases for those. But now you can see with the addition of the container content that we released, you can see what container images and attributes do you have out there. You start to see, like I said, the orchestration layer. So what pods are out there? What clusters do you have running? Do you have any unorchestrated containers, like I mentioned before? You can also see which containers are running in privileged mode versus not privileged, right? So if a container is running in a privileged mode, that's a little bit more, it has the capability of impacting the host and other containers. So you want to understand what those are and where they're running to be able to understand if they should be running in that way, as well as look to see, how long have containers been around? Traditionally, containers are supposed to be short-lived, but many of our customers have told us that, they have containers running for hours, days, and sometimes even weeks. And so the longer a container runs, the more concern you might have for, is that container image still the image that you deployed versus, has it mutated over time because of the process that's running inside of it? The first thing to know is you have to have the Tanium client container. And all this is a container that Tanium has packaged and built with the Tanium client within it. What this allows us to do is allows us to place the tools on the box that are necessary to be able to use the content. The Tanium client on the host isn't enough. But at the same time, if we were to place the Tanium client in every single one of your containers, that's just not practical, right? Going back to a microservices architecture, you really want, probably one process running in your container, and adding an agent inside every container is just not practical. So we developed the Tanium client container. This gives you the capability of running one container per worker node, and this allows it to provide the tools necessary. Now, keep in mind that the preferred methodology that we use is you actually deploy the Tanium client on the host where you can, but that's not always practical. We'll get into that in a bit. And where you can't, you can deploy the Tanium client container in a client mode, allowing the Tanium client container to actually be the one to answer questions.
So, Adam, that's a good segue then into understanding what platforms are supported with the Tanium client.
Sure. So we support both OpenShift and Kubernetes. This allows us to cover a lot of customers that are deployed both in the cloud and on-prem, whether you're running as your own Kubernetes cluster or whether you're running a service from Google or Amazon or Azure. You can actually deploy the Tanium client container within any of those services as a privileged container, and start to get insight into other containers that you're running there. I'm not going to drain the rest of the slide, but we'll leave it up here for a little bit to let people see, the other things that are supported within the container.
Yeah, you can screenshot that if you want to keep that up. Now, I remember from the training that I took last week that there were a couple different modes that the client would operate in. Can you help us understand kind of the nuances of what's going on there?
Yeah, so the different modes that the container operates in, there's really two different modes. One is directly on the host. So this is what we refer to as a tools-only mode. And this is the preferred methodology. This gives you the capability of running your existing use cases on your host operating system, as well as deploy the Tanium client container to allow you inspection into all of the containers that are running on that host. And so that's what you see on the left-hand side here. You see the container host, and one of the clients that's running is the Tanium client. This client starts up in a paused mode, and what that means is that it's not going to be consuming a license. This is pretty important for people to understand. It's one of the biggest causes for confusion when customers are initially looking at the content. We only consume one license per host in this case. So we have the Tanium client running in the container, but it doesn't check into the Tanium server. The client that is on the host operating system is the one that is actually talking to the Tanium server. The other alternative is, you're running maybe Kubernetes as a service. You're running EKS in AWS, for example. You don't have access to the underlying host operating system. So you just want to be able to deploy the Tanium client and get as much visibility as you can into other containers. So you run the Tanium client container again, but this time, instead of it being paused, it's actually the one talking to the Tanium server, and it is the one answering questions, and it will only answer container-based questions. You won't get any other questions out of this particular setup.
So one question I had when I saw this, I'm thinking some of our customers might be thinking the same thing here. So in the left scenario, I've got it on the host. So that means I can see all the containers that are on that host?
Yes.
Okay. But then the scenario on the right, if I'm running inside one of those containers, can I only see what's in that one container, or do I have visibility to all the other containers on the host?
You would have visibility into the other containers on the host as well.
Okay, so I'm not really missing anything, am I? Except just obviously on the right-hand side, if it's a cloud host, I'm not never going to be able to see that anyway. So,
right.
One of the things I want to clarify for my own understanding was, are we getting all the data in both of these situations? Are there nuances of, like, I might not see something in this one where I'll see it in the other one?
Today, you'll be getting all the data, but keep in mind that this content is brand new and we're looking to extend it through other use cases. And so one of the things to keep in mind is we're recommending deploying this through directly on the host, because in the future, some use cases may not be supported whenever it's running as the Tanium client container.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, there's going to be a limited functionality there. Right. Any more slides, or are we ready to move to demo?
Just one more slide, because again, to see whether it's a tools mode versus a client mode container, you can expect different answers in your environment, and I want people to understand that if you don't mind. So a normal endpoint with no Tanium client container, you'll see not applicable without the Tanium client container for any container sensor. And then when you're running in the TCC mode, so there's no TCC client mode, there's no Tanium client container on the host operating system, you're going to see not applicable on Tanium client container for any non-container sensor. That's just kind of 2 points that you might be wondering why you're not seeing some data, and that's because you're running in one way or the other.
So if I ask something like get computer name, is that a container sensor?
That is not a container sensor. So all of the container sensors exist in the containers content set when you import them. And so you'd be able to see, if you go look at your sensors page, you'd be able to see which ones are within that content set.
Right. So it just kind of makes sense that some things are not going to have container data. So there's nothing for them to return. So you've got I was looking in my console today, over like 1,200 sensors now, or something crazy. But all those aren't going to return a value inside that container because those don't all make sense. There's no Windows registry in there and things like that to ask questions about. So it's just limited to these container sensors. That makes sense. Okay. Right. Well, let's take a look at it. Show us what this looks like. How do we get this into our environment? Maybe is the next question.
All right. Yeah. So the solution is just an import. So if you go to your solutions page, you'll be able to scroll down and you'll see it in the list down below. It's called the containers solution. And from there, it's just going to import a whole bunch of sensors, saved questions, dashboards. And then you'll be able to actually start to play with it pretty quickly. So one thing you'll see that you can get even without deploying the Tanium client container is being able to see what running containers do I have in my environment. And so you can start to see, the containers that we have running in this environment. Right now, we're getting responses back from 240 containers. You can see some of the image hash. You can see the operating system that's being reported. You can see whether it's orchestrated or not. Going back to a conversation that we had earlier, this Bitcoin unorchestrated container might be something that you should go inspect and see why it's running in your particular environment. And then, of course, the other part of this solution that is not available from the solutions page, you have to actually work with Tanium support, is our trends board. So in a trends version coming soon, this will actually be available in the gallery. But right now, it's only available via contacting Tanium support. And so the trends board at a high level gives you the capability of seeing the number of running containers over time, the number of pods from your Kubernetes environment. You can start to see just simple things like the vendor, what vendors are providing containers, what Kubernetes service. Start to see the runtime. So do you have all Docker, or did you switch to Containerd? A lot of people are moving to Containerd versus Docker now. You can start to see the container image hash. So not only this, you could drill down and ask and see the results behind this and start to do outlier analysis and understand, I only have 1 or 2 containers running this particular hash. Is that a little bit interesting? And then, of course, being able to see if you have any privileged containers, understanding that those might have a little bit more access to the underlying host. So you want to watch those a little bit more closely. And is it relevant that you have 3-week containers that are running over 3 weeks in your environment? Should they not be running? And specifically, going back to the microservice concept that we talked about. A lot of times people are trying to move towards fewer processes in containers, ideally one process per container. So if you have a container that's running 39 different processes, that's probably breaching the architecture that you're looking for.
Wow, that is a fantastic list of graphs and charts that gives me lots of visibility into my environment. So I'm curious, so we install the content from the solutions page if we're an on-prem customer, and Taz, it's already there.
Yes.
And then I contact support to get this trends board file to import, and I'll have that for now at least. That's how we get it.
Right.
So there were two modes. There was the host install mode, which it looks like is getting some of this data. So is there a process that I have to do specially to actually get it installed in the other mode where it's running inside a container?
Yeah, so in both modes, you'll actually want to deploy the Tanium client container. So I forgot to mention that earlier. You will want to reach out to support for both the gallery or the this trends board as well as the Tanium client container. Right now, they actually come both packaged together in the same zip file. So whenever you get one, you'll get both. And you'll want to place that Tanium client container in a private registry. We don't allow the Tanium client to be posted publicly. So you place it in your private registry that you probably already have. And then you'll want to deploy that Tanium client container to all of your nodes. We just need one Tanium client container deployed to all of the worker nodes, typically done via a Kubernetes daemon set. And after that, the Tanium client container will start up. The Tanium client will be running in a paused mode if it detects a Tanium client running on the host. And that provides the Tanium client on the host with the tools that are necessary for it to inspect the containers running on that host. If it's not running on the host and it's just within the container, it'll start up like normal after you do the deployment, and it will actually start registering with the Tanium server.
Nice. Now, I think there's some dashboards as well. Is that right?
Yes, Ashley, we do have some good content from a dashboard standpoint. So you can see here, I've already favorited the containers category, and you can see some of the container source dashboard, for example, and see what we have here. You can see that we have 3 saved questions, and we actually start with orchestrated containers because that's where most of your containers probably lie. You can start to see, some of the same questions that we looked at before, and understand what's the image hash, what pod is it running in, and so on. Of course, you can look to see where all of your running containers are at, and if there are any containers running maybe where they're not supposed to be, maybe on people's laptops and such. So if we just search here, we'll see some containers running. Last but not least, you can start to see unorchestrated containers running in the environment. So understanding where those are at and why are they running and such. And of course, this isn't the only dashboard. There's a handful of other dashboards that we have. So you can see those and drill into those as necessary from Interact.
Fantastic. Wow. So I can really tell as for a minimally viable 1.0 type release, there's really a lot of work and thought that's gone into this. There's a lot of feedback we've gotten from customers that have driven this capability, and there's more to come. Adam, I know you're not a PM, but is there anything you can tell us? We never talk about dates necessarily, but what's kind of coming? What are we looking at to do next with containers?
Sure. So some of the biggest use cases that our customers are asking for revolve around being able to look at compliance and vulnerability of containers, as well as threat response. So I want to be able to do signals within containers, or start to search for vulnerable images that I have in my environment and such. So those are things we're looking at, but of course, all of this is driven based on customer demand. So the one thing that I would mention is customers, please talk to Tanium support, whether that's a TAM or through our support center, and make sure that you're letting us know what your use cases are, and that we're able to, what you need to be able to meet the use cases that you have come up with.
Well, Adam, thank you so much for this time on the show today. It's been really interesting to see the latest customer ask that we've implemented yet again for our customers. So thank you for giving us this tour today. Anything else as we wrap up?
Yes, Ashley. So two things. One is there's going to be a link to the community post. By the time this airs, we will have a community post going through some of the same things you've seen today. And within that community post, there will be a link to a user survey. So it's very important for us to understand what use cases our customers are looking for, what environments they have. And so that way we can design the next version of containers for what our customers actually need. And the last thing is we also will have a link to docs.tanium.com. Of course, understanding what is required and how to do the deployment and everything is important. So you'll be able to read all of the documentation for the containers content there.
Adam, thanks again for joining us on the show today. This has been fantastic. Just it's great to see just the consistent innovation coming out of Tanium. And I know I say this all the time. I'm the host of the show. I work for Tanium, but I'm just a technologist in the industry. And it really is fascinating to me to see how much new visibility and control we're releasing and enabling for our customers in their environment. So I have a slide here with some quick takeaways just to wrap things up. So like Adam said, number one use case here is visibility. We can see things we couldn't see before. That's important. Number two, we can find those outliers, those machines that have been like the paving policy uptime issues, right? They're outliers because they've been running too long, or they're not running the right gold image, or all those things that you don't necessarily want to find, but you need to find in your environment, right? And you can also find those configurations that are different, or those machines that are running with policies or containers that have too much granted to them. So those are some of the capabilities that we're giving you in this first time out of the box experience. So as always, I have a bit.ly link here for you to go to Tanium Containers. It's a case sensitive link. Go ahead and drop into there. That's our community post. Like Adam said, it's going to take you out to the docs link. It's going to take you to a survey where we would really like to get your feedback to know what are the use cases that are important to you that will drive our development going forward. And then you'll hear from Adam and others on the team right there in that post what you need to know to get started with this content and your environment. And as always, here at the bottom of the slide, you can interact with us on the community. You can talk to me and Adam in the forums and ask questions, or you can simply email go@tanium.com. And we'll be happy to answer your questions. So thank you for joining us of this episode of the Go-Tanium Tech Talks. Until next time, Go-Tanium.